novel, well, it's not really a debut novel anymore, because now I'm calling it a fictionalized memoir, but then somebody else said I should call it a roman à clé. Do you know what a roman à clé? Yes, of course, Amy does. Roman à clé is when it's based on fact, but the names are slightly changed. The names are changed, things are changed, but there's a key. Roman à clé, there's a key which gives you the information you need so you can figure out who's really getting talked about. Okay? Really? Mine is absolutely a roman à clé, because all you have to do is go on my Facebook and you'll see every person in my book. I didn't just say that.
Is that a French term?
Yes, it's
Roman
spelled E-L-E-F.
E-F with a clef. Yeah. What is that called? No, what is the thing called over the...
Accent.
You suggested accent. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to say chat.
The goo is this.
Chat.
No, the goo is
Accent.
Oh, I have one over mine.
All right. Okay, so anyway, my book chronicles a woman's quest to find her place and purpose amid sex, drugs, rock and roll, and celebrities. Andy, a 30-something single, smart girl, up-and-coming rock and roll promoter, is now in a committed relationship with Lenny, her ex-comedy teacher, who unknowingly started Andy on her path as a rock promoter. It's 1990, New York. Andy has recently segued from running a small, albeit very successful little club in the village, to owning a night, Thursdays, on Broadway, Midtown, moving on up. Kind of. It's a huge venue, but kind of smelly. She's a lone woman in a sea of rock boys. Her opening night at the renamed for her Jam Girl was a smashing success, but she got ants in her pants and an aging rock boy trying to get into them. Oh, look, they're shushing. Oh, I have shushers. Sha. Yes, we sha. We don't shush. Okay. We're all going to be experiencing this for the first time because I have no idea what this is because I was a little busy. Okay. It was a new world. The early days of MTV and video jocks. Music in Motion, a small New Jersey music channel, approached me about VJing. They wanted to capitalize on my nights by having me interview the players and then present my live show on the air. It was all pretty exciting, giving me a new avenue to perform. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed it. Years of studying acting and being on stage had led me somewhere, only the damn destination kept changing. That same week, Jim Fellows offered me a promoting gig for an art opening at Buddy's. He assured me it wouldn't interfere with my Thursdays at Stonehouse. Wit? I'm like not speaking English today. It would just give us a chance to see how we worked together. His club was very avant-garde because of its celebrity namesake, Rick Budd, rock legend. And the gallery upstairs, which attracted known artists and photographers as well as their famous subjects. Jim was making Lenny crazy. Lenny didn't like him or trust him, not one little bit. Jim was a party boy who wanted what he wanted and was fairly relentless in his pursuit. The fact that he owned a hip club and gallery and was the ex-husband of a 60s superstar only added to his cred. The fact that he was bad, well, that didn't hurt either. The event at Buddy's turned out to be the opening of Brian Black's photo show. Brian had shot Sam Anderson's first album cover, a rock classic. For over a decade, it had been plastered on posters and t-shirts everywhere. Even though he'd been working steadily ever since, none of his subsequent work exceeded his debut. It was sort of his American Pie. I was out of my league, never having moved in those circles before. My dad's wife, Roxlyn, was an artist. Never liking her was a good enough excuse to not pay attention to what she loved. I was young, 15 when they met. Thanks, Harriet. And all I knew was that she was taking my daddy out of the city to the far reaches of Long Island suburbia. She owned a big house in a sleepy town that was dark, isolated, and for me, epitomized loneliness. She thrived in the quiet. It deafened me. After a lifetime as a Catskill Mountains master of ceremonies, she pushed my dad to retire from the one thing that fed his soul and his ego. She didn't like it there with those people. Only she was one of those people. But she didn't see it that way. Almost 20 years younger than my dad, she was so much older in so many ways. She dressed like a hippie with bad taste, well past the 60s. She spoke in a sing-song insincerity and wore a huge omnipresent grin, which made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. She was like a Mooney without Reverend Moon. Thank you. During the academic year, my dad taught Hebrew, traveling great distances between two schools to make ends meet. It was an exhausting existence 6 days a week. He lived for the summers where he was center stage. Once performing was taken out of the mix, he lost his passion. As the years wore on, he became more and more listless and unhappy, until he drove Roxlyn away with his worries and complaints. He did a few gigs here and there, but it wasn't like the old days when he sang night after night, receiving praise and adulation. Once the regular dose of applause was gone, so was his vigor. Thanks to Roxlyn, he'd given up the stage, and I'd forfeited any interest in anything art. A mature decision indeed. I approached Brian's show as I had every project to date. After doing some research, I wrote a press release, designed an invitation featuring the famous shot, and then plastered the press and club-going public with them. Music in Motion was given the exclusive in exchange for mass promotion. We shot a series of commercials at the club, creating quite a stir, as there were cameras and lighting crews up and down 3rd Street for hours. Even though they were New Jersey-based, they ran the ads constantly, and the word did get out. I picked bands that would complement the mood and create a similar vibe for the reception to follow in the club downstairs. Fortuitously, I was able to land some of the players that had been sidemen for Sam Anderson back in the day. I promoted the evening everywhere, including Jam Girl on Thursday nights, which understandably did not make Frankie and Steve too happy. But the beer stench was getting to me anyway, and my crowd was growing tired of the place. It had been a hip novelty for a few months, but it had lost its charm. The nights were still busy, but were ever so steadily diminishing, and we all knew it was time to pack it in. Thankfully, the Brian Black opening was a huge success. The red carpet sizzled as Music in Motion filmed the arrivals. The streets were lined with interested passers-by trying to catch a glimpse of the invited. Rumors sped quickly who was there, and better still, whom they thought was there. I interviewed the attendees who were game. Most of them didn't realize it was just Jersey cable. After the cocktail reception in the gallery, everyone headed downstairs for the show. Little Steven, Bruce's guitar player, long before the Sopranos made him a household name, showed up and agreed to be interviewed. Joan Jett came too. I didn't ask her to go before the cameras, knowing how much she valued her privacy, but thankfully, her pitch black hair and leather-clad form were unmistakable in the crowd shots. Lenny and I were now inseparable. My apartment became our midweek city flat, and his place uptown, our weekend country home. I maintained my routine of waking early, working out, getting high, followed by my promotion and publicity responsibilities in the afternoon. Lenny slept in most mornings unless he had something cooking. Other than Wednesday, his teaching day, his afternoons were fairly flexible. Auditions were erratic, some weeks far busier than others. Often he spent the day with me as we made our calls and conducted work from home. It allowed for plenty of time for falling in love. We began our nights at the comedy club. Lenny would do a set, then a quick hang at the bar with the other comics. From there we'd head to the land of rock, hear a band, hang out, and push my nights. We were, for a time, insiders in both worlds, and they synced well together. Lenny had been making his living doing stand-up since before the massive influx of the untalented desperately trying to jump on the I'll get my own sitcom bandwagon. While still in high school, he dared to do some open mic nights at one of the only comedy clubs that existed in New York then. Within a short time, he passed. That meant late night spots that paid. $5 it was, and probably still is. The money wasn't the point. The validation and exposure was all that mattered. He was part of an elite crowd whose high rankers included Seinfeld, Reiser, Marr, and Murphy when they were starting out and on their ascent. Being on the inside of all that was a huge accomplishment for a young guy with a dream. Lenny was a good comic, a smart one, observational as they started calling it. He wasn't wacky, didn't have an offbeat look or unique character. He was tall, blonde, blue-eyed, and attractive, and that probably cost him. He quickly moved from MC to middle, and within a few years he was headlining, one of the lucky few that earned his living doing what he loved. A road warrior, he worked New York City midweek and the great big US of A on the weekends, partying till dawn, sleeping until noon.